The final straw. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the TSS Humanity's Hope, watching Earth's defense fleet conduct what appeared to be routine exercises. To the casual observer, especially the Concordat's ever-present surveillance drones, it looked like nothing more than standard military drills. They couldn't have been more wrong. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of what was to come. "All ships maintaining pattern Delta 7. Admiral." Lieutenant Rodriguez responded from his station. "Concordat observation posts are logging exactly what we want them to see." Chen nodded, allowing herself a slight smile. For 50 years, humanity had played the role of the cooperative younger species, accepting the Concordat's guidance and protection. They had swallowed their pride as alien bureaucrats dictated how they could expand, what technologies they could develop, and how they should govern their colonies. The breaking point came 3 days ago. The Concordat Security Council had ordered the evacuation of New Eden, humanity's most successful extrasolar colony, claiming the planet had been incorrectly classified and was now deemed suitable only for species with superior environmental adaptation capabilities. 300,000 human colonists, given 1 month to abandon their homes, their farms, their lives. All because the Verkath, a species of silicon-based sentience, had suddenly developed an interest in the planet's mineral wealth. "Message from Shadow Command," Rodriguez announced. "Project Prometheus is ready for activation. All sleeper cells report green status." Chen turned from the viewport, her expression hardening. "Send the authorization code, and patch me through to the Concordat's High Council chamber. Let's give them one last chance to avoid what's coming." The massive holographic display at the center of the Concordat's High Council chamber flickered to life, showing Admiral Chen's face. The assembled alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. Humans weren't supposed to have direct access to this communication channel. "Honorable Council members," Chen's voice carried no hint of subservience. 3 days ago, you ordered the evacuation of New Eden. This message serves as humanity's formal response. High Counselor Zextal, his crystalline form shimmering with barely contained irritation, leaned forward. "Admiral Chen, this is highly irregular. All communication should go through proper channels." Chen interrupted. "Like the channels our colonists were supposed to have access to before you decided to steal their world." "No, today we're doing things differently." Warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the chamber. On every monitor, security systems began reporting massive breaches. Defense grids went dark. Communication networks crashed. Quantum computers across 1,000 worlds suddenly began speaking in a new language, human code. "For 50 years, Chen continued, we've played by your rules. We've bent the knee, smiled politely, and acted the part of the primitive species that needed guidance. And while we played that role, we prepared." Screens throughout the chamber showed impossible images. Massive human fleets emerging from supposedly uninhabitable systems, advanced weapons platforms decloaking in orbit around Concordat fortress worlds, and armies of combat drones pouring from the cargo holds of what were registered as simple merchant vessels. Those primitive fusion drives you mocked. Turns out they're perfect for stealth operations when properly modified. The simplistic binary code you dismissed. It just took control of your quantum networks. Those inefficient manufacturing methods you criticized. They've been producing weapons and ships right under your noses for decades. High Counselor Zextal's crystalline form vibrated with fury. "This is an act of war." "No," Chen's voice was cold. "This is a revolution. Humanity is done asking for permission to exist. New Eden stays in human hands. All current human colonies remain under human control. And starting today, we expand where we choose, how we choose. You cannot hope to stand against the combined might of the Concordat." Another counselor shouted. Chen's laugh sent chills through the chamber. "Look at your screens, counselors. We already have. You have 1 hour to formally resign the New Eden evacuation order and acknowledge humanity's sovereign right to self-determination. After that, Well, let's just say we've gotten very good at solving problems through superior firepower. The transmission cut off, leaving the council chamber in chaos. As the counselors scrambled to comprehend the scale of what was happening, a small message appeared on their primary display. Lesson 1. Never corner a species that turned mutually assured destruction into a game of chicken. And 1. The revolution had begun. Silent thunder. The Concordat's military response was exactly what humanity had expected. Predictable, overwhelming, and completely useless. Captain Maya Santos watched from the bridge of the stealth destroyer TSS Shadowdancer as the massive Concordat warfleet emerged from hyperspace near Saturn's rings. 2,000 ships strong, each vessel bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. Under normal circumstances, it would have been an intimidating sight. "They still haven't detected us?" Santos asked, though she already knew the answer. "No, Captain," Lieutenant Park responded, monitoring the sensor array. "Their quantum scanners are still trying to track our old fusion signatures. They have no idea we cracked their detection algorithms years ago." The Concordat fleet arranged itself in a textbook assault formation, preparing to push through to Earth. Their commands would be coming directly from the Concordat's strategic eye, a quantum computing marvel that had never lost a battle in its 1,000-year existence, until today. "Signal from Admiral Chen," Park announced. "Operation Checkmate is a go." Santos allowed herself a small smile. Launch the ECHO platforms. Throughout the Saturn system, hundreds of seemingly inert debris fields suddenly came to life. The fragments of rock and ice that the Concordat sensors had dismissed as natural phenomena revealed themselves as advanced human stealth platforms. Each carried a payload that the aliens had deemed impossible: hybrid quantum/binary processors running human-designed combat algorithms. "Platforms networked and synchronized," Park reported. "Beginning electronic warfare sequence." The effect was instantaneous. The Concordat's mighty warships, guided by their supposedly invincible strategic AI, suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. Their quantum computers, designed to think in elegant, predictable patterns, encountered human code that broke every rule they knew. Santos opened a channel to the enemy flagship. "Concordat vessels, this is Captain Santos of the Earth Defense Force. I see you brought friends to our little party. Would you like to see some of ours?" On cue, the rest of humanity's hidden fleet revealed itself. 500 ships, each smaller than their Concordat counterparts, but bristling with innovations born from centuries of human warfare. Vessels powered by contained artificial singularities, weapons that bent space-time itself, and defense systems that had been tested against humanity's own doomsday scenarios. "Impossible." The Concordat admiral's translated voice carried equal parts fury and fear. "Your species lacks the technological advancement for such weapons." "No," Santos corrected him. "We just let you think we did. You know what humans are really good at: learning from our mistakes. And our greatest mistake was letting you dictate the terms of our existence." The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. The Concordat fleet, suddenly stripped of its AI advantage, found itself facing an enemy that fought with terrifying creativity. Human ships executed maneuvers that their tactical computers deemed suicidal, only to emerge from seemingly certain death with devastating counterattacks. What the Concordat had failed to understand was that humanity hadn't spent the last 50 years just developing technology. They had been developing entirely new ways of thinking about space warfare. Each human vessel operated with a level of autonomy that the rigidly hierarchical Concordat found incomprehensible. "Status report," Santos called out as another wave of Concordat ships fell into disarray. "ECHO platforms have successfully compromised 60% of enemy vessel systems," Park replied. "Their quantum networks are experiencing what we like to call a comprehensive technical education." On her tactical display, Santos watched as Concordat ships began firing on each other, their compromised systems unable to distinguish friend from foe. Others found their hyperdrives activating at random, scattering their formation. A few simply shut down completely, their crews suddenly discovering that life support systems worked much better when they weren't trying to fight the human code now running through their ships. Message from the enemy flagship, Park announced. They're requesting terms of surrender. Santos looked at the tactical display one last time, watching the mighty Concordat fleet reduced to chaos not by superior firepower, but by humanity's gift for turning its opponent's strengths against them. Send them Admiral Chen's standard response, she ordered. Welcome to the new galaxy, where humanity doesn't ask for permission anymore. As the surrender signals began flooding in, Santos couldn't help but think about how the Concordat had never understood the most dangerous thing about humans. They learned, they adapted, and most importantly, they remembered. The revolution wasn't just succeeding. It was changing the very nature of warfare in the galaxy. The art of human warfare. Commander Raj Patel sat in the dimly lit command center of Outpost Omega, deep within what used to be secure Concordat space, watching as his latest art installation unfolded across multiple star systems. The aliens had never understood humanity's penchant for what they dismissed as inefficient creative thinking. Now they were learning just how deadly the creativity could be. Status on Operation Trojan Horse, he asked, sipping from a cup of actual Earth coffee. No more of that synthetic stuff the Concordat had insisted was more efficient. Lieutenant Emma Chen, no relation to the Admiral, grinned as she pulled up the holographic display. The Concordat's automated defense networks are experiencing what we're calling a philosophical crisis. Turns out when you introduce their quantum AI to human concepts like jazz improvisation and abstract expressionism, they have trouble maintaining their rigid combat protocols. Across the display, hundreds of Concordat defense platforms were executing what looked less like military maneuvers and more like an interpretive dance. Some had formed themselves into what could only be described as an abstract sculpture in space. Others were broadcasting what appeared to be attempts at human poetry, badly translated, but points for effort. And the main offensive? Patil asked, trying not to laugh as one particularly enthusiastic defense satellite began performing what appeared to be a solo from Swan Lake. Right on schedule, Chen replied, switching the display. The Vorkath fleet that was supposed to occupy New Eden just encountered what they think is a spatial anomaly. Actually, it's just a few thousand retrofitted mining drones running a program based on Earth traffic patterns at rush hour. The display showed the crystalline Vorkath ships trapped in what effectively amounted to a cosmic traffic jam, their rigid tactical programming unable to cope with the seemingly chaotic, but actually carefully orchestrated movements of the human drones. Have they tried shooting their way out yet? 3 times, Chen smirked. Turns out our drones are running an algorithm based on how bacteria evolve to resist antibiotics. Every time the Vorkath adapt their tactics, our swarm just evolves a new response pattern. Their tactical officers are having collective nervous breakdowns trying to find the logic in it. Patel nodded approvingly. This was what the Concordat had never grasped about humanity. Their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers, but their ability to take ideas from anywhere and turn them into advantages. Who else would think to base space combat tactics on everything from bee swarm behavior to jazz music theory? Message from Field Command, Chen announced. The Concordat's attempting to rally their forces for a counteroffensive. They've fallen back to their core systems and are attempting to establish a defensive perimeter. How very predictable, Patil mused. Time to introduce them to Operation Orchestra. The holographic display shifted again, showing the massive Concordat defensive line. It was impressive. Thousands of ships arranged in perfect geometric formations, supported by state-of-the-art defense platforms, and protected by overlapping fields of quantum disruption. It would have been nearly impenetrable to a conventional assault, but humanity had long since abandoned conventional thinking. Begin the performance, Patil ordered. All sections, prepare for synchronized chaos. What followed was less a battle and more a symphony of disorder. Human ships appeared to move randomly, their formations following patterns based on everything from weather systems to stock market fluctuations. Each individual unit acted with apparent independence, yet somehow contributed to an overall strategy that emerged from the chaos like a picture coming into focus. The Concordat's defensive lines, programmed to respond to traditional military tactics, found themselves trying to fight what seemed like armed madness. Their attempts to predict human movements failed because their computers couldn't accept that the humans weren't following any recognizable strategic doctrine. "Sir," Chen called out, "we're receiving signals from multiple Concordat command centers. They're asking if we'd be willing to explain our tactical doctrine to them. They're offering immediate surrender in exchange for understanding how this is possible." Patel laughed, nearly spilling his coffee. "Send them a copy of Sun Tzu's Art of War and a collection of jazz albums. Tell them that once they understand both, they'll begin to grasp how humans think about warfare." As the surrender signals continued to pour in, Patel reflected on the irony. The Concordat had spent centuries building the perfect military machine, only to watch it fall apart when faced with an enemy that treated warfare as an art form rather than a science. "Sir," Chen interrupted his thoughts, "Admiral Chen is requesting a status update. What should I tell her?" Patel looked at the display one last time, watching as the mighty Concordat defense fleet tied itself in knots trying to counter tactics based on butterfly migration patterns and bebop jazz. "Tell her the concert is going wonderfully," he replied. "And the audience is finally learning to appreciate human music." Ripples across the stars. The Galactic Information Network had never experienced anything quite like it. Across thousands of worlds, species that had lived under Concordat rule for millennia watched in stunned fascination as humanity dismantled centuries of established order in a matter of weeks. But it wasn't just the military victories that caught their attention. It was what came after. Dr. Lyra Nash stood before the emergency assembly of the Interspecies Coalition, an organization that had previously been little more than a Concordat puppet. Now, with the Concordat's power broken, representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to understand what this new human-influenced galaxy might mean for them. The humans did what? The Meridian delegates' translator struggled to convey their tone of disbelief. They gave the Vorkath colony rights to 3 mineral-rich systems in exchange for sustainable mining practices and fair labor laws, Nash repeated, hiding her amusement at the ongoing confusion. They said something about showing them how to play nice in the cosmic sandbox. The assembly erupted in a cacophony of translated discussions. The very concept was alien to them, a victorious species choosing cooperation over domination. The humans had the military might to simply take what they wanted, yet they were negotiating. But their victory was absolute. The Zenthari representatives' crystalline form flickered with confusion. The strategic algorithms indicate they could establish complete dominion over Concordat space within weeks. "We could," Nash agreed. "But that's not how humanity wants to build the future. We've had enough of empires and dominion. We're more interested in something new, genuine collaboration." She gestured, and the chamber's holographic display came to life, showing scenes from across former Concordat space. Human engineers working alongside Vorkath crystalline architects to design hybrid cities that served both species' needs. Human agricultural experts helping Meridian biotechnologists develop crops that could thrive on previously uninhabitable worlds. Former Concordat defense platforms, their AI now freed from rigid programming, serving as deep space research stations for multi-species scientific teams. "Humanity didn't fight this war to become the new Concordat," Nash continued. "We fought it because we believe every species has the right to determine its own path, including our former enemies." The display shifted to show New Eden, the colony whose threatened evacuation had sparked the conflict. But instead of a purely human settlement, it now housed a thriving multi-species community. Humans and Vorkath had discovered their different biological needs meant they could share the planet's resources without competition. But what about security? The Zenthari pressed. The Concordat maintained order. Through suppression and fear, Nash interrupted gently. "We're proposing something different. Mutual defense through cooperation. Every species brings its unique strengths. Together, we're stronger than any single race trying to dominate the others. She brought up another display, showing the new Joint Defense Fleet. Human ships flew alongside vessels from species that had, until recently, been their enemies. The combined force was developing tactics that merged the best of each species' military traditions. The Concordats' greatest mistake wasn't underestimating humanity's military capabilities, Nash explained. It was failing to understand that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our creativity. It's our ability to learn from and work with others, even those who were once our enemies. A small commotion at the chamber's entrance drew attention. A delegation of Concordat representatives, former high officials who had survived their government's collapse, entered hesitantly. This was their first public appearance since the revolution began. Speaking of which, Nash smiled warmly at the newcomers. Welcome to the first truly open session of the Interspecies Coalition. We saved you seats. I believe you'll find today's agenda interesting. We're discussing a proposal for converting the Concordats' former military installations into a network of universities. Open to all species, of course. The chamber buzzed with conversation as the former Concordat officials were led to their seats, not as rulers, but as equals. Many species were still adapting to this new reality. One where cooperation replaced domination, where strength was measured not by the ability to control others, but by the capacity to work together. New Dawn. 1 year after the revolution, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation dome of Harmony Station, watching ships from 100 different species move through the bustling space lanes below. The massive space station, built at the former site of the Concordats' military headquarters, had become a symbol of the galaxy's transformation. Quite a view, isn't it? A familiar voice asked. Chen turned to see Captain Maya Santos approaching, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the newly formed Interstellar Cooperative Defense Force. Hard to believe this was all Concordat battleships a year ago, Chen replied. Now look at it. Trade ships, scientific expeditions, cultural exchange vessels, even tourist cruises. Speaking of cultural exchange, Santos grinned. Have you heard the latest? The Verkath have become obsessed with human music. They're experimenting with crystalline instruments that can replicate jazz harmonies. They're calling it crystal bebop. Chen laughed, remembering how the Concordat had once dismissed human art forms as primitive emotional expressions. Now, the galaxy was experiencing a renaissance of cultural cross-pollination. Species that had been isolated for millennia were discovering the joy of sharing their unique perspectives and abilities. Latest report from the Frontier Development Initiative, Santos continued, pulling up a holographic display. The Joint Human Meridian Terraforming Project has exceeded all projections. Turns out when you combine human adaptability with meridian biological engineering, you can make pretty much any rock habitable. The display showed new colonies springing up across former Concordat space, but unlike the rigid, segregated settlements of the past, these were diverse communities where different species worked together, each contributing their unique strengths to the whole. And the defense network? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Running smoothly. The quantum AIs we liberated from Concordat control have developed a fascinating hybrid of logic and creativity. They're particularly fond of using Earth's weather patterns as inspiration for patrol routes. Something about the chaos theory in meteorology really speaks to them. A small alert chimed on Chen's comm unit. Ah, looks like it's time. Care to join me for the ceremony? They made their way to the station's Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from every known spacefaring species had gathered. The massive chamber, once used for Concordat military parades, now housed the Galactic Cooperative Council. High above the assembly floor, a piece of the original Concordat headquarters had been preserved. A massive crystalline wall bearing their motto, Order through Unity, Progress through Control. Below it, a new inscription had been added in hundreds of languages. Growth through diversity, strength through cooperation. Chen took her place at the podium, looking out over the assembled delegates. Among them sat former enemies and new allies, previously primitive species and former overlords, all now working together as equals. 1 year ago, she began, humanity was pushed to its limit. The Concordat thought they were containing a threat. Instead, they awakened something far more powerful than military might, the human capacity for transformation. She gestured to the displays showing scenes from across the galaxy, former warships being converted into exploration vessels, defensive platforms repurposed as scientific outposts, and battle fleets transformed into peacekeeping forces that protected the rights of all species. But the greatest transformation wasn't in our ships or our technology. It was in how we all learned to see each other. The Concordat believed that diversity was a weakness to be controlled. We proved that it's our greatest strength. The assembly erupted in a chorus of cheers, translated through hundreds of different languages, but united in sentiment. We stand here today not as conquerors, but as partners in a grand experiment. Can species from different worlds, with different biologies and perspectives, work together to build something greater than any could achieve alone? This past year has given us our answer. As if on cue, a new ship appeared on the main display. The product of joint engineering teams from 20 different species, it carried weapons powerful enough to defend against any threat, but its primary mission was exploration and scientific research. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, Chen concluded. Not our technology, not our military might, but our conviction that the universe is big enough for all of us, that our differences make us stronger, that the future belongs not to those who would control and contain, but to those who dare to cooperate and create. As the applause filled the chamber, Chen looked out at the assembled delegates. Former enemies, now allies, past oppressors, now partners. The galaxy had learned its lesson about underestimating humanity. But more importantly, it had learned what humans had known all along, that the greatest adventures, the most remarkable achievements, and the brightest futures come not from standing alone, but from standing together. The revolution was over. The real journey was just beginning.